Welcome back to the Teacher's AI Cafe. I'm Kane, a teacher and a parent who wants AI to give us back our time. I share practical classroom-tested AI strategies to cut down your workload, improve your feedback and reduce stress so you can get your evenings back and be more present with your friends and family. No jargon, just actionable steps. Grab your mug. Now let's get going. Welcome back to the Teacher's AI Cafe for today's episode. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at different levels of users and the different tasks you do at different levels. It'll be interesting to see what level you are. Before I get into today's episode a bit more depth, subscribe to the mailing list. I haven't sent out last week's email yet. I'm moving my mailing list to a new service and I'll get that up and running in a couple of days and get those worksheets and those resources so you got paper versions instead of listening to what comes with the audio, so you can, even if you just copy and paste it coming out. So today I'm going to talk a little bit more about Claude, and this really does apply to ChatGPT as well as a few other ones in there. And we're going to talk about the different levels of users. And I think it's quite interesting because you can think, what sort of level am I actually at in terms of other people? We all start off as beginners, as amateurs, but where have we got to in the journey? Because it's been over almost 4 years now, is it? 3 years? I know time sort of flies. Almost 4 years since AI came out. And basically what I'm going to go through each level is I'm going to talk about what sort of tasks and tools within Claude's, this context, you actually use at that level, and the different benefits you actually get at the different stages. So the first one I'm going to do is level one. We'll call that the amateur. And that's most of us, that's where we start. So for that, people who are actually using Claude at level one is primarily a question and answer type of tool. The educator opens a new conversation whenever a task appears, might ask Claude to create a lesson introduction, explain difficult concept, draft an email, and so on. These tasks are usually isolated. The lesson created today is not connected to a worksheet you produced yesterday. It does not know what the teacher's preferred lesson structure is, literacy level of the class, relevant curriculum, and so on. It's that once-off type conversation. The work completed at this level is therefore usually short-term production. Claude generates a starting point. The teacher still needs to reshape it. The tool level one is really just your standard chatbot conversation that you actually get in there for that. And like I said, people do build on top of that. And this is where we're at. So you can do lots of different things in isolation with each other. The second strategy when you're saying this is allowing Claude to ask questions before beginning. So we're talking about asking the questions, but now we get it to actually ask you questions. And a lot of the AI systems are starting to build that in there. I was playing with Claude Design the other day, and I asked it to do something. It asked me a whole lot of questions automatically to clarify exactly what I wanted to produce in terms of a slide deck. It didn't turn out too bad either. The third strategy is then asking Claude to review your existing work. So the educator is learning the generation and evaluation at different stages, and Claude can create a resource first, then examine it for factual accuracy, clarity, reading difficulty, and so on, and then align it to a learning objective. At level one, it's a very straightforward workflow. The educator will identify the task, provides basic context, gets a response from Claude. Educator checks and edits the result, comes out there, iterates it if it needs to. What you're really gaining out of this is actually speed. You can do things a lot faster. Teacher can produce some initial draft much more quickly than staying with an empty page. Limitation of this is obviously inconsistency in the outputs that you get, because each conversation is essentially new. Each new conversation begins with little knowledge, like that, and about the educator or the working environment. So what's level two? And this is the regular. And I've got a feeling most of my readers are at least at the regular readers, my listeners, are actually at the regulator stage. So level two, this is Claude stops being a collection of disconnected conversations and become a dedicated workspace. Now, this is where an educator will start using projects. And once again, I highly recommend that. A project can be created around a subject, course, class, responsibility, initiative, and so on. History teacher might create a project for year 8 medieval history, and I've done that. A career teacher might do around senior careers program, English around the study of the Hunger Games. My son's doing that at the moment. So a curriculum leader might create one for a faculty review. So the idea is we start to group the different information, the different elements. And the idea is this, at this level we get is broader and more consistent in the outputs we actually get out of it. Instead of asking Claude to create one lesson, the educator then shifts to developing the entire teaching sequence. You can do this in level 1, but it's not as consistent, it's not as good. So once again, instead of one worksheet, we might do a collection of resources using the same structure and style. The major tools when we look at level 2 are project instructions, uploaded files, examples, and a knowledge base which you develop. So you can upload your files. You can give very explicit instructions within the project. So an educator might provide the curriculum documents, course outlines, assessment requirements, and marking rubrics, templates, previous lessons, example guides, style guides. Claude can use these materials as the background information when completing future tasks within the project. A central strategy at this level is creating a master prompt. This may include preferred lesson structures, reading levels, curriculum. So basically, what your context or what your classes are. This means the teacher no longer needs to repeat the same instructions in every conversation. The project already knows that lessons will include retrieval practice, for example. It's a low literacy class or it's a highly academic class. You can put real increase to the vocabulary that's actually in it. It knows you want to use whatever local language, in my case, Australian English. It knows, I said literacy levels, it knows all these different things. In terms of the workflow, what happens is the educator now enters a dedicated project each time they come in. It's already got all the details in there, so they don't need to repeat themselves. And the capability gain at level 2, so level 1 we're getting speed, and that's where a lot of us start off. Level 2 is actually consistency. Claude begins producing material that looks and feels as though it belongs to the same teacher, course, and organisation. And this is important because the teacher is no longer starting from zero. It's building on a growing body of context. And as you add more to your project, the AI learns and reinforces what you want to do. The limitation is as much as the information Claude needs may still exist outside the project. So once again, we need to feed that information into it. Documents, you can also move it. Documents can be stored in Google Drive. You can link into that. You can add things in calendar and things like that. And discussions may be hidden, say, in an email. But like I said, as we move up, we can start to integrate these different services in that. So level 3 is the integrator. What a nice segue. At level 3, the educator begins connecting Claude with the places where the work is actually happening. So AI is no longer sitting in this isolated bubble all by itself that we're feeding information into. It starts to become part of the process. Now, the problem with this level is not usually the lack of information. The problem usually is the information is scattered. And I'm guilty of this. You do a bit on this platform, a bit on that platform, you share different information. Therefore, it's scattered all over the place, and you often spend a lot of time trying to unify it. So a teacher may have curriculum documents in one folder, lesson resources in another, and so on, spread of different things. Without integration, the educator needs to spend time searching, copying, uploading, downloading, moving information between the systems. In some ways, I'm actually still at that. I had close to 100 gigabytes worth of educational resources, and actually used Claude through work to actually sort that all for me, because it was a decade worth of resources I just saved. And now it's all nicely neated in folders by subjects, by history, resource type, PowerPoints, PDFs, videos, and so on. It's actually really nice and neat now. And AI did that for me, slowly but surely. And also went through and found all duplicates for me. When you put something up there, you save it, and then you end up with 4 copies of, say, horrible histories, a task or something like that, from different years. So anyway, get back to integration. So integrator moves this movement. What the tool allows us to do is we can use connectors on the platform, and then we can link in things like Google Drive, Gmail, your calendar, Slack, Notion, and other compatible services. And this is growing all the time. And if you're looking like Claude Code or Codex, for example, you can give it access to pretty much everything on your device, desktop, so you can even link up more in. But obviously we've got these connectors built in that we can use. So Claude can now search the connected information, identify relevant material, combine the sources, and produce an organized response. The work completed at level 3 is often based on the gathering and synthesizing this different information. A teacher might ask Claude to locate all the resources related to Industrial Revolution and organize them by type. I already mentioned that. It did that for me. A curriculum leader might use it to review meeting notes, project documents, and recent discussions to preparing an agenda. A teacher might use it to combine calendar events, employee communications, excursion information, deadlines, and so on into a weekly briefing. So another important capability of this level is the creation of artifacts. An artifact is more like a standard chat response. Artifact is more than a standard chat response. It can be a substantial document, interactive resources, visualizations, mini applications, timelines, dashboards. So things that are actually richer products that we produce. And this changes the type of output Claude can produce. At earlier levels, Claude mainly works with text. At level 3, we're starting to turn in information that students and teachers can actually interact with. Teacher might create an interactive historical timeline. Might create a decision marking key activity and so on. And today I was experimenting with, it was actually in ChatGPT, making websites, interactive websites and escape rooms very quickly using ChatGPT. I'll talk about that in another episode. I think probably next week. It's pretty cool. And then now Claude is in the browser, so it can also assist with work taking place on websites. It can include comparing information, navigating a process, helping complete repetitive browser-based tasks. However, this capability requires more careful supervision, depends how much permissions you get to it, particularly where school systems, personal information, sensitive records are involved. But if you're at home, obviously, you can do it to the degree that you're happy. The workflow in level 3 becomes Claude searches connected sources, collects relevant information, organizes and interprets, produces the output you want. The educator checks the sources, approves the result. The capability gained at this level is the integration of all of these into your workflow. The educator spends less time moving information between the applications, more time evaluating the actual combined results. Limitations: the educators may still be repeating the same sequence of instructions each time. But the idea is, it may regularly ask Claude to create the same type of lesson, briefing, or worksheet report, but the idea is it can draw on these resources very quickly. Level 4. Level 4 is the operator. And like I said, not a lot of people are moving the operator, at least in the educational area, definitely in some industry areas. At level 4, the educator stops focusing only on the finished product and begins examining the process we use to create it. So the teacher starts to rely on the AI workflows. So consider the creation of a guided reading activity. Teacher identifies curriculum content, selects a reading, adjusts the reading level, defines key vocab, creates questions, produces model answers. They check the questions can be answered from the passage, so you want to double check if they can actually answer it from the passage. They format the final resource. This is not one task. This is a sequence of connected tasks that follow a recognized pattern. At level 4, the educator packages this pattern into a reusable Claude skill and command. My last episode talked about skills. The major tool of this level, like I said, is skills. I'm just repeating myself there, aren't I? And I've been told skills are coming to ChatGPT, but I haven't seen them yet. The skill stores instructions, steps, quality, standards, and so on. Like I said, go listen to episode 97. That'll have some more detail on that. And I've had that guide coming out very shortly about doing skills. So within the skill, you can actually do the lesson planning, source analysis, creation, all within these different skills. And you just apply them again and again. So you've already gone through, connected everything. Now you're using the skills to do these repeatable tasks. So you don't have to do them each time. And then obviously you always check the output that comes out. So this creates a controlled production pipeline. And so when you do, say, one task for one, say, history class, and if you want to do the same basically task but with different content, you can then just obviously feed different content to it and create the same structure and output, saving you lots and lots of time. So it's important the educator remains responsible for the overall direction, but Claude manages the repeatable steps. It's my analogy of being in the car. You're still driving it, but AI is getting you to your destination under automation for you. So this task may work through scheduled tasks such as co-work and similar task-based features. Education arranged for Claude to prepare recurring briefings, reviews and summaries. A weekly process might collect upcoming calendar events or go do research for you. I use that to go collect things that happened in AI in the last week to do my Monday weekly report. Saves me lots of time, and we'll actually go through and find that what I put in the criteria, what I need to share with you, and save you having to do that. So a curriculum might schedule a regular project update. Education business owner might schedule a weekly summary of product development, customer inquiries, and so forth. The important distinction is that Claude prepares the work. The educator still reviews the important outputs before acting and distributing them. The workflow becomes, at level 4, the educator identifies the repeatable process, documents the required steps, packages them in a skill, supplies the changing information, Claude completes the established sequence. Another skill, RoPress, might check the outputs, because you can split skills, checking skills, and the educator approves the final result. The capability gained at level 4 is concise repeatability, even going beyond that consistency. The educator does not merely save time on one task, they build a whole process saves time every single time that task needs to be done. The limitation is the educator is still largely working within existing application interfaces, but let's see what we can do at level 5. Level 5, the builder. So level 5 is the educator begins creating software and digital tools around their own needs. This does not necessarily mean they become a professional programmer, and probably the best modern term is this vibe coding. I think it's an ad for it. There's a one where such and such built it was a whole interface or thing that was actually happening. I can't remember the ad now, but they were saying they were amazed that someone in the office built it. That's vibe coding. The idea is you can build stuff without actually knowing how to code. And to a degree you can, it just depends how complex it is. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Also means you need a clear understanding, a problem enough to design a tool to solve it. And once again, this is your expertise. You need the experience to think about what tool do I need to do to actually solve this, and what steps do I need it through and tell the AI to actually produce it. And that's what people miss in that vibe coding step. So the work completed at this level is different from ordinary content. The educator is not simply asking Claude to create a worksheet or lesson. They're asking Claude to build a system that can generate, organize, check, and deliver work repeatedly. For example, a history teacher might build an escape room code checker, a digital version of that. Students might complete classroom activities, enter their answers, receive feedback, and progress through the challenge. And literally, I actually built one of those in about 15 minutes yesterday using ChatGPT, and it works really well. I might share it. The psychology of a teacher might build an interactive revision quiz that changes the questions every time, because you think about my BSage and Microsoft Google Forms or Microsoft Forms where we can do quizzes and things like this. This way you can actually put a brief in there, so if they get the first 3 questions correct, you can then start giving them harder questions. You can make it dynamic. And a curriculum member might build a searchable curriculum resource catalog. So there's lots of different bits and pieces we do on here. So the primary tool working at level 5 is Claude Code. And this is where you can actually directly interact with applications and devices on your actual computer, whether it's a laptop or whatever the case may be. And some of them, like Code, you can actually do on your mobile phone. So Claude Code can actually work with files, write, edit software, test code, identify errors, and assist in the development of complete applications. One of the most important strategies of this level is actually planning before you're building. And we're moving into the area of project management. The first educator needs to define who will use the tool, what problem it solves, what information it requires, what output it produces, how users will interact with it, what could go wrong, and how will it be tested. The plan mode helps separate the design stage from the construction stage, because AI is pretty much doing all the construction. This prevents Claude from producing large amounts of code before the requirement is clearly understood, having to repeat yourself. The teacher becomes more like a project manager or a project designer. They describe the need, Claude develops a technical solution. The educator tests the results against some real classroom conditions. The work at level 5 may include 3 broad types of development. First, a simple tool that completes a narrow task, does one thing. The second is application and interface that supports an ongoing workflow. Third is an automated process that communicates with file services and external systems. The most successful first projects are normally small, and I do recommend staying up small. One clearly defined problem, one group of users, one primary function. Just do one thing really well, and that's where we should always start. Now, the workflow of level 5 becomes really the educator has to identify the practical problem, defines the requirements, Claude creates a development plan, educator reviews the plan, Claude builds the tool. The tool is tested and improved. The educator decides whether it is suitable for real use, and the capability at level 5 is that creation stage of something a bit more concrete, more than just a worksheet. The educator is no longer limited to the software that's available to them. They can actually produce their own software. They can bring shaping software around their own classroom, curriculum, admin, business needs. Now, the limitation is scale. Building a one-use application, say a website or something to do that. So I'll take the example today, or yesterday I built a escape room, a digital version of that. I had a paper version for my class. I thought, hey, can I build a digital version of that? It created a website. It's completely interactive for this escape room based around the rise of Hitler and the death of democracy in Germany. It's pretty cool. It's got 6 different stages. Kids have got to solve puzzles using the web page. They get a code and they enter it, just like you normally do. But essentially, I just dropped my paper version in there, gave a couple of sentence instructions and built this for me, and then I had to refine it a little bit. But I actually create something that's now reusable. It's digital, I think. Now, can I scale that? I can scale it by sharing this link with more people, and it's reusable now, which is fantastic. But if you try to scale like a system, they do become very complex. And this is where the difference in vibe coding, where people create stuff, they try to make it complex and scale up, maybe for large corporations, that they run into problems. Because that's when you need really software engineers, software designers, proper programmers that can actually do that, more substantial work, more technical work, make it more secure around security and so forth. Whereas AI is not at that stage yet in terms of your novice non-programmer. Programmers will use it to do that, but if you're just vibe coding, you can do that. So aim for small, single-use, single-task sort of problems and build from there. Once you build a good repertoire and build some experience. And are there any more levels? We can say there's one more. Level 6. Level 6 is almost like reaching your black belt. So is the agent orchestrator. So at level 6, Claude is no longer being treated as one assistant completing one task. It becomes a coordinated system of specialized agents. Each agent is designed to do a particular job or responsibility. One agent might focus on curriculum alignment. The other one conducts historical research for you. The other one designs lessons. Another one will create assessment materials. The other one will examine feasibility differentiation. Another may review the final product for errors, and the main agent coordinates all the work. So the idea is you've got lots of minions or elves running around doing all this different work for you. The role is to understand the overall objective and distribute the different tasks, monitor progress, identify gaps, and combine results. Consider the development, say, Year 9 units on the Industrial Revolution. Curriculum agent identifies the required knowledge and skills. A research agent checks the historical content and locates appropriate sources, particularly saying, go find some primary sources. Lesson design agent develops the teaching sequence. Differentiation creates literacy support extension activities. The assessment agent produces the final task rubric and so on, model response. A critique agent reviews and completes the unit for factual accuracy, consistency, accessibility, and alignment. The main agent then assembles all this in a final package for the educator. This tool may include things like Claude Code subagents, agent teams, external connectors, such as Google Drive, automation and communication interfaces is giving you feedback. Now, the educator might communicate with the system through a computer, mobile device, or external messaging service, because you can hook it into Slack and Notion and things like that. Depends where you want to get your feedback. Now, the work at complete this level is usually at large scale and it's ongoing. And our role as educators, we tend not to do that. We tend to do all these ones and refine it. But when we look at that, we can put our existing programs into it and then refine all our resources, our teaching programs, our lessons, using this sort of process. So it might support, say, school leadership, combining planning, reporting, communication, operational information, things which they've done manually. The idea is they can automate these processes. Now, the critique agent becomes especially valuable at this level. So its responsibility is not to create the material. You really want to say it's got to look for errors, unsupported claims, inconsistent instructions, weak assessments, and so on. Now, this is the job as you as an educator, and we normally do this as a process. But if you're automating all these processes, you want something to check it before it actually you need to go through it. So an initial checker. That way the work can be returned to its relevant specialist agent. If it finds an error, they might say, look, it doesn't align to the curriculum, you've got to go back and fix it. It can then send it back to the agents to redo it, and you don't have to get involved within that. The idea is we see this improvement before we see the final version. The workflow for this level 6 becomes an educator establishes the objective and the standards. The main agent divides the objective into specialized tasks. It does that for you. Sub-agents complete the assigned work. The critique process reviews the results. Weak agents are revised. Coming out of that. Stop. Start. So the weak sections are revised. The main agent assembles the final product. The educator gives final approval. And then essentially you can either print it out, publication, share it with your team, whatever the case may be, depending on the product. The capability gained at level 6 is orchestration. You're like the conductor. The educator moves from managing individual tasks to designing, supervising the entire system. But as I said, your professional responsibility does not disappear. It just does a lot of the work for you. And once again, you still need to protect things like confidential information, check factual accuracy and all those things. So even if you get all that, even if you got the check in there, obviously we're still going to sit down and read through this and make sure it's good. So hopefully all this information has been produced to a standard that we expect, because we've got lots of examples there, models and things like that, that we're actually getting things back that we want to do. Now, that sounds really complex, but you find over time as you start to move through the different levels, you can build these skills. You start building your skills, and you feed your skills into each other, and you start referring to it. You can start do it. So as you concentrate at this stage on the skills levels, develop your skills, use the consistency, make sure they get really good results, and then you can start incorporating and combining them together. And what we're looking at when you use AI is this gradual change in the relationship between you and the AI agent, in this case, Claude. Level 1 is produce individuals' answers. Level 2, persistent context. Level 3, we start connecting systems, richer outputs. Level 4, we create repeatable workflows. 5, we build tools and applications to do things that we don't have tools to do. And 6, it coordinates specialist agents. But as we go through this, your role also changes. At the beginning, you're really just editing Claude's first draft. At the middle levels, you're designing instructions to supply knowledge and establishing workflows. Advanced levels, the educator is defining systems, setting standards, and so on. The real progression is not from beginner to programmer. It's about completing a task to actually do things you want to do. The best starting point depends on the problem. If it's simple, go level 1. If it's the same preference being repeated, you know you're working level 2. If the information is scattered, you start connecting, you're at level 3. You start using those particular skills and workflows, and so on as you move back through them. And at different stages, you'll move back different sort of levels. But your experience, if you can work yourself up to, say, level 4, using things like skills, using connected devices, then you're easily moving up and down between 1 and 4. And that's the level you're at, and you build the skills and knowledge. And some people might only get to there because that's all they actually need out of it. So hopefully this has actually been helpful, thinking about where you are in your AI journey. Most educators will be getting up, if you're using it substantially, I see you seeing around the level 4, you're connecting all your different devices, maybe Google Drive, you've got skills working repeatedly. And if you ever get to that level and you stay there, that's actually perfect. And because that's for 99% of educators, that's pretty much what people are actually using it for. So anyway, hopefully you found this useful. I'd love to hear what level you're at. Join the Facebook group or drop me an email. And once again, I'd like to hear your story, what you're doing, and your different journeys. And if you want to come on, I've got to chase up some more teachers, because sharing stories is the best thing about the podcast. And because hearing what other people do, they do things I don't even think about. Till then, look after yourself and take care.